TED Talks have taken over my life, kinda.
There are some amazing speakers.
From a magician to astrophysicist.
Talking about really relevant topics.
I watch a TED Talk every night before I go to sleep.
I learn from TED Talks.
It's hovering over your kid and supervising absolutely everything that they do, all day, every day, as much as you possibly can. Anderson, nice job. Look at this. This is amazing, right? So I want to start off today by sharing a story with you. It's a number of years ago. I'm working in elementary school, about a mile from here, actually, and I'm watching the kids play at recess, and I see one of the kids get pulled out, and he was getting benched. And you know, you don't want to get benched. And so I walked over to the yard teacher, and I said, what was it that he did? Did he say a bad word? Did he hit another kid? No, he was running. Yeah, let that sink in for a minute. He was running at recess. He was playing with his friends, an element of play was running, and he got benched for that. And I was just blown away by this, right? I mean, we're a nation that's really terrified of increasing rates of childhood obesity and hyperactivity and lost focus in the classroom, and he's getting benched for running in the one time of day that he's supposed to be running, and I was just blown away. And I said, hey, when did this become a thing you get benched for? And he told me it was a couple of years ago. There were some kids playing tag. Two little girls ran headlong into each other, and one of them dislocated her jaw. Really messed up accident, right? And some measures need to be taken, but now the thousands of kids that are going to come after her have their ability to get exercise, to get the wiggles out of the classroom, right? To go and actually play as children uninhibited, totally infringed upon because of one accident. And these stories are becoming progressively more common at schoolyards around the country. Now, this particular individual told me the genesis of this rule was a couple of years prior, but I think it actually dates back a little bit further to 1978 and a boy named Frank Nelson. Frank Nelson was playing on a tornado slide in a park in Chicago. This is what a tornado slide looks like. And he fell from the slide, and he was paralyzed. This was unarguably a tragic accident. And in the process of suing the city of Chicago, his parents and their advocate dug up every one of the most grisly and gruesome accidents that had occurred to date on playgrounds across America and began to refer to those playgrounds as a game of Russian roulette that our children are playing. And they were really successful, right? They won the lawsuit, but then government got involved and reports were commissioned and articles were written, and all of a sudden parents are starting to take notice, and it began to erode away at parental risk tolerance where matters of their kids' safety are concerned. And it's led to what we now refer to as helicopter parenting. Now, some of you may be familiar with this phrase, and if you're not, I'll tell you what it means. It's exactly what it sounds like, actually. It's hovering over your kid and supervising absolutely everything that they do, all day, every day, as much as you possibly can. The unfortunate irony, though, if we look backwards, is that no amount of helicopter parenting could have helped Frank Nelson. Frank's mom was 3 feet behind him. It was just a tragic accident, that's all it was, and probably not one that she could have prevented. Now, my parents, they were the opposite of helicopter parents. They sat me down when I was 8 years old and said, guess what? You're walking to school by yourself today. And I was a little nervous, right? I mean, I'd had stranger danger and kidnapping kind of socially beaten into my head, and I was thinking, they're sending me to school by myself? And they said, yes, you're a big kid, it's a safe neighborhood, you can do this. And so I did. And after a couple of minutes of walking towards the school, the sense of fear dissipated as I realized that I was okay, and it was replaced by this incredible sense of pride, of self-confidence that I was starting to get to be a big guy and I could in some measure take care of myself. It was a really important experience for me, and it's one that most kids just don't have anymore. And I think that this is something that kids progressively are losing more and more as we move towards overprotection, because the fact is that unsupervised play and exposure just to moderate levels of risk are incredibly important for child development, and not only for child development, but for our ability to build skills that make us successful in the future. Now, you would think, because we have this big move towards overprotection, that the world must be a much more dangerous place for kids now, right? That's intuitive, right? There's got to be like a really high level of childhood mortality and injury, and that by being overprotective, we must be making a dent in that, right? But as it turns out, the data really just don't support that. And I'm going to get to that in a minute. But first, I'm going to talk to you guys about the fact that there's this woman in Norway, developmental child psychologist, who's identified these 6 types of risky play. All right, these 6 types of play that sure as you're all sitting here, kids left to their own devices will engage in. Sure as you're sitting here. My personal favorites were numbers 4, 5, and 6. And the amazing thing that you learn is that when kids have the opportunity to engage in these types of play and navigate them safely, they develop these skill sets. And I'm not going to read the whole skill set to you, but you'll see, like, these are the skills that matter to us to be successful professionals, successful adults, and competitive, right? And what we find also on the flip side of this is that if you don't have any exposure, you're more likely to develop phobias like stranger anxiety and separation anxiety. You're more likely to be unduly risk averse and to develop learned helplessness. And if you don't know what that is, I'll tell you, it's when you can't solve a novel problem or navigate a new situation you've never been exposed to without somebody else stepping in to help you do it. Right? So with all this overprotection, I mean, are we actually making a dent? Well, the data actually would seem to indicate that we're not really changing too much. Right? I mean, you do see some reduction over the last 30 or 40 years, but you're not seeing huge decreases. And what you also see is that these are really small numbers to begin with. There was a study done in 2004, and we're talking like in a country like America, on the order of 12 or 13 kids per 100,000. And I don't mean to minimize the impact of loss of life or injury among children. That's not my intention, but I do mean to say that the data just don't seem to support the idea that these are more than accidents, that these are actually a trend towards a more dangerous childhood. Now, some of you out here, you may have been raised by helicopter parents. You may kind of have your own perspective on this. But some of you might still remember what it was like when you spent your free time in places like this. You might remember before your life was scheduled from morning to night with activities back to back, when you actually had some free time to determine what kind of play you wanted to engage in. How many of you, just a quick show of hands, I am curious, how many of you remember this? Leaving a note for your parents. Can I just get a show of hands? Okay, so you guys remember this, right? When you could actually tell your parents where you were going, who you'd be with, and when you'd be back, and then you could disappear for hours. This is unheard of now. Absolutely unheard of. But while we were gone from adult supervision, we were developing our imaginations. We were building worlds with our minds and sharing them with our peers. We were moving into and out of interpersonal conflict, and we were exchanging in a free give and take of ideas without ever being driven by ego. And this is something that I defy you to come up with one CEO, one great innovator who isn't a master of those skills. You're all Anderson students and faculty, right? You know that we're in a progressively more competitive world because it's not good enough anymore to have a great quantitative skill set or a great qualitative skill set, right? Because if you have it, somebody else has it. What employers are looking for more and more now is that entrepreneurial spirit, right? The willingness to take calculated risks, the ability to get the best out of yourself and everybody else around you on any kind of team, and to tackle any problem, no matter how complex or how novel, with creative, outside-the-box thinking. And that is developed when you are a child, but it is developed when there is no adult around to solve the problem for you. And the thing is, parents, they want this. I've worked with parents for years. They want their kids to be successful. They want them to be able to take care of themselves. They want them to be competitive, but they have to fight to balance that with that innate mama bear, papa bear instinct to protect their kids from any and all ill that could possibly befall them. And I will tell you, that is the most natural instinct in the world. But when we overprotect and we overschedule and we overshadow, we are taking away from our kids the ability to have the experiences and to develop these skills that will be the true differentiators of their futures. So what do we do, right? I mean, I'm not foolish enough to think that I should ever tell a parent, don't look after your kid, don't supervise your children, don't protect them. That would violate every evolutionary imperative of parenting, and it would be irresponsible. But I want to leave you with a couple of thoughts tonight. For you who are parents or aspiring parents in the audience, things just to think about and be aware of that might help us reverse this trend at the social level. The first is low-hanging fruit, right? Talk to your kids. Talk to them. Talk to them about risky situations they may run into. But don't just give them the answers. Don't tell them what to do. Generate hypotheticals. Have them come up with answers themselves, because I will tell you as an educator, if they can do that with you, they're much more likely to be able to do it when they run into those situations out there in the world. The second thing I want you to think of is start to check yourself. Check yourself about what is unacceptable, intolerable risk. Think about what you did when you were a kid, even if that might freak you out a little bit. Think about what you did when you were a kid and how you pretty much came out of it okay. And this is a hard thing to do. Get your significant other involved. Get your friends and your families with kids and your neighbors. Get the kids going out together. Because if you know that they're with people and you know who they're with, where they are, and when they're coming back, it gives you a broad parameter within which to be able to make sure that they're okay while also giving them the freedom to have these experiences that are just so critical. And the last thought I want to leave you with, and this is a tough one, but it's not impossible. Start to get used to the idea that your kids are going to get hurt sometimes. You could stand next to them all day, every day. They're going to get hurt sometimes. There's just nothing you can do about it. And it's okay. It's an important part of learning. But if you can address these situations with calm, not only will your parenting experience be more fun and enjoyable and less marked by anxiety, but your kids will take those cues from you. They will learn to address risky situations with a cool head, and you will have given them a great gift. And it's a gift that will last them for the rest of their lives. Thank you.